The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Renato could use that somehow. Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy, and that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the ravens?
Hey, wanna hook up?
That was odd. Bernardo had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. But this time, there were so many more ravens. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the ravens?
ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages empty like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals.
Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't... But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the ravens?
Oh, someone needs a bath.
The ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Renato looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best.
Interrupted story time. Don't believe Raven. Now we'll never find out how it ended.
Maybe I should follow my nose, thought Renato. It would be fun to throw healing fruit at people. They wouldn't know whether to be mad or not. That could come in handy in a pinch.
Before I kill you guys, Renata said, do you let me know where I can get a good smoothie around here?
Lapino would betray him. But now Renato knew that. What would Lapino do if he knew that Lapino was going to betray him? Well, he'd concoct some crazy scheme, wouldn't he? That used Lapino's betrayal against him and it would blow up in his face. Maybe he was overthinking this. Well, that would be a first. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck.
Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him.
On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lapino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lapino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy.
He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right. Lapino was a traitor. But still, it was good company. Ah, Zenobia. Now that he knew she still loved him, he wanted to go back to her. But that hadn't worked out, had it? Maybe it was time to find the core of the Sky River.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
That was awesome!
Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, a few birds. He didn't have the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones. I'm getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lapina was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy. Like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides.
It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it.
He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lapino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost. The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps, and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato.
But what if Lapino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself. Lapino was a touchy rabbit. Renato knew that.
You're brave, I know, Renato said. But this is what I was hired to do. Oh, well, at least let me run ahead and warn them you're coming.
Renato wondered if Lapino was up to no good. What if the rabbit warned the Empire instead? Oh, but Lapino wouldn't betray him like that. Not again. Before it'd been a fluke, right? They finished the trip to the Nexus in silence. He would offer Lapino a chance to betray him, or not to. His old friend deserved another chance to prove true.
All right, Renato said. Go.
As Renato watched Lapino vanish on the horizon, he could feel nausea building in him. He felt ill. Could his knees really be aching this much? But how could he have handed the core off to Lapino? That was a recipe for disaster. only he had some way to break the ice. Or convince it he was a friend.
Bernardo felt worse. All his joints were aching now. He'd been through beatings that felt better than this. So the core had a kind of poison that could harm you without even touching you. That's new. Well, it had power. The rebellion needed something with power. And how was this any worse than a sword wound? Well, a death by sword was sudden and fair. This was just squalid. A piecemeal death, like old age.
The Nexus Observatory had some of the Empire's greatest scientists. If anyone could rig the core into a useful weapon, and even better, make it stop leaking poison, it would be them. The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. Really reason with an energy ball, he thought. This chest was filled with reprints of the entire Sandman series. Reprints? What was the point of collecting those? Ooh, and there was something else. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists everywhere. Bernardo found the Mad Rabbit cowering under a desk. The Ravens, they must have known we were coming, said Lapino. How did you...
Well, see, I was doing a card trick with my lucky deck, and I kind of bobbled the cards, so I went under the desk to gather them up, and boom! I guess we'll have to take the car straight to the secret base.
Renato wasn't sure he believed that, but Peter was talking so fast. He always seemed to make sense.
The secret rebel base. Yes. They had engineers there. But wait. Calaveras, the sage in the mountains. Maybe he would know what to do with the naked core. The core was killing him. He needed help. The sage, Calaveras, had given him the maps to find the armature and the core. If anyone knew the true name of the Transcendent Emperor, if anyone knew how to assemble the Sky Ripper, Calaveras did. If anyone could heal Renato and render the core safe, at least to its bearer, surely it was he.
The base of the mountain was the only safe place for a landing. He would have to continue on foot, muscles aching.
Calaveras was a scholar, not a doctor. Could he really save Renato from the poison radiating from the lost god's eye he was so recklessly carrying?
Renato checked for a false compartment. Nope.
Oh, this was not a fun way to die. Even if he survived. No one would write ballads about the fox whose knees ached forever, would they? Not unless he paid for it. And he hated paying for publicity.
Ice walls only let you through if they knew you were cool. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails.
It was chilling walking through the living mountains. There was always noise up ahead. Insects, birds, the croak and flutter of ravens arranging ambushes. But close by, there was only the breeze and the trickle of melting snow. As if every living thing was holding its breath for his poisonous burden to move on. It was like living in the world's
deadliest bowman right by his side.
The lead raven?
Open, says me. Renato wasn't sure he should have rescued Lapino. He could have had the Sky Ripper. Now all he had was the core, but it was killing him.
The core! Splendid! Croaked Calaveras. Where's the armature?
Right, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't need it.
No, I don't. It's just a professional interest. We've got much better prismatics than the old TE ever did.
So Calaveras was an arcane engineer. He fussed at the core all day. He wrapped it with silver chains, and in front of it, he placed a huge, round ruby, so that it looked like a monstrous, floating eye. Ah, so, what is it?
Yeah, I call it the oculum. It's my very first death ray.
And it won't poison me?
Oh, no, it's completely safe now.
Anything I should watch out for?
Yeah, try to avoid pointing at any mirrors.
As he loaded the oculum onto the Farfarer, Bernardo was a little concerned about Calaveras.
People who were utterly sure of themselves, he had found, were either experts or horribly wrong. Or both. But Reynardo only needed to fire the oculum once. He only needed to destroy one ship. The Emperor's ship. And the war was over. Reynardo plunged into the Imperial fleet. He felt the oculum humming. He no longer felt sick. This was going to be fun. Or at least, it was going to be over. Reynardo resisted the temptation to fire the oculum until the time came. He could sense its arcane energies yearning to escape the sage's wrappings. But it wasn't eating him alive. So that was a plus. He felt good about himself. He'd saved a friend, he'd helped the rebels, he'd relied on himself, but he'd listened to others. He felt like the right sort of hero. Wise, yet decisive. Calaveras had been so sure it would work. Maybe he could fire it just a few times. No harm in that, right? But only when he absolutely needed to. Reynardo's arm was getting tired. The core was no longer eating at him, but he still felt weak. His stamina was shot. But he had the oculum. When the ravens swarmed him, it would sometimes fire its death ray. It seemed to be warming up too, firing more and more often. Maybe he should let it cool off. He decided to stop using it entirely. Craziest weapon he'd ever used. This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a fight. Odd. The oculum was still hot to the touch. He almost thought it was getting even hotter. Well, that was ridiculous, of course. Anyway, he'd only to fire it one more time, and then he could chuck the whole contraption into the abyss. And the Emperor's ship was now in range. Reynardo squinted. He could make out the line of ravens protecting the ship. Zenobia in front, conjuring. And on the deck, yes, that was his Imperial Majesty, pacing in his golden armor. Reynardo lined up his shot.
and fired. Caught in the beam, the ship burst into flames. The Ravens and Zenobia exploded. The Emperor, too, exploded. Renato waited for the beam to stop, but it only got brighter, and the oculum hotter. Frantic, Renato pulled the oculum towards the abyss. The ruby burst into flames. The shiny metal casing glowed, then melted. That was good. Now the core could cool off, right? Renato ran. The blast incinerated him instantly, along with both fleets. The shockwave could be felt across all Erda. That winter, with neither Empire nor rebels to rule them, the islands slid into banditry. And so began the Second Age of Darkness. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renato wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper?
Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
Anyone ever tell you have a lovely eye? No? Had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper without causing a catastrophe. Why? Maybe it's always dangerous, he imagines Zenobia saying. Always the voice of reason, that one. Well, there had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper because not being able to use it was boring. So there. What did you do if one of these platforms stalled?
Kill the rebel! Caught one, Raven. Eat the rebel! Caught another. The ravens. Nobody said they were original.
Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway.
The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Renato asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because, know your enemy. All right, maybe he should stop pretending. He knew exactly how she felt about him. But their love affair always ended with a tragic death. Unless, maybe he could find a way to dodge tragedy. Surely he could, couldn't he? Oh, look! Fracking. He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he?
thought, Renato.
Renato wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core?
Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous.
These streets were familiar. The Sword Fu School was closed now, but he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself. It's like having a pet. Well, like having a goggler for a pet. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the Iblistone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in. But why didn't he get the core? Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Renato grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia. That makes no sense. It's a trap, shouted the Emperor. I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators. If Renato came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying. The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had to tell the truth. The trick was in making sure she wouldn't believe it. The core is perfectly safe, he said. And he tried his hardest to sound sincere. So is the Iblistone. In fact, I was trying to get them myself. Fine then, interrogators it is, she said angrily. I gave you a chance. The Emperor's interrogators were not especially gentle, even by Weasel standards. Fortunately, Zenobia had locked him in the guest quarters on her ship, and she'd forgotten it had a toilet that, like all skyship toilets, could be vented into the abyss. This was not the sort of slippery fox he wanted to be. But just as they were about to land, he threw the latch, wrinkled his nose, and leapt through the open latrine.
It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. Well, maybe she would. You never knew with her. There was an inscription. Praise the sun. Bernardo knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Sky Ripper. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. Giving the Emperor all of the rebellion's secrets hadn't been quite the disaster he'd thought. It had drawn the Emperor out of the safety of his fleet. Bernardo could sneak into the outpost, and in a few sword strokes, he could win the war. But the Emperor would be surrounded by his elite guard. Bernardo wondered if there was anything he could say that would confuse the old turtle even more. Word instead of the sword? Bernardo was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Bernardo grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Bernardo, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Bernardo heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Bernardo. Now the fleet would be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father. Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council, and then launch the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet. Bernardo was very proud of himself. He told the Empire everything.
But now they didn't believe anything, and it looked like the Emperor didn't trust his daughter anymore either. There were some advantages to having a slippery reputation, weren't there? Bernardo wondered if he'd really fooled the Empire. He guessed he'd know soon enough. If the skies darkened with 1,000 dropships, then he'd know the Empire believed his map of the rebel base's secret location. They certainly seemed to be looking for it. There were ravens everywhere. But where weren't there ravens these days? Hypatia, the kid's mother. Bernardo had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. Maybe the Emperor would attack Zenobia. The Ravens, divided into two armies, would slaughter each other. Then the rebellion could just show up and claim victory. The Council would be overjoyed that Bernardo had given away all their secrets. There was an engraving. Maximum capacity, 130 people.
You could travel at night, so long as there were ravens set on fire.
It was actually very fine weather, except for the occasional shower of ravens. And no one was burning the ruins down with the mighty power of a god's eye. If the Empire believed anything he'd said, they certainly weren't showing it. Rushed. Oh.
thought, Renato?
Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare? Snapped Renato, a little smug.
Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
We do it, said Renato to himself.
As he told his hilarious adventures to the Rebel Council, he began to realize they weren't laughing. Just staring at him with those big bug eyes.
Zenobia let you escape?
Asked the speaker.
How do we know you're not a double agent?
Then I wouldn't tell you about her at all.
Maybe you're trying to sound like an idiot, so we don't realize how clever you are,
croaked the speaker. No, I promise you, I really am that much of an idiot, Renato was about to say when a half-dozen Imperial ships began to bomb the base.
He's betrayed us,
croaked the toads, and Renato decided it would be good to be somewhere else.
He boarded the Farfarer and got out of there.
The wind ruffled Renato's fur the wrong way. So, the rebels thought he was lying too? Because a half-dozen lousy dropships had probably just tripped over the rebel base? Okay, technically, he had betrayed its location, but not willingly. And he'd made up for it, hadn't he? Then something exploded. A cannon shot. The Farfarer plunged out of the clouds. The rebels had hit his ship.
As the Farfarer plummeted towards the abyss, he launched himself into the sails of an Imperial ship. The Farfarer was gone. It had been a beautiful ship, and fast. It could do the Kestrel run in 12 furlongs, or so the salesman had told him.
He would show them. He would be the hero of the final battle. They'd know whose side he was on then. That's what it meant to be a hero. To go on fighting, even when both sides were trying to kill you.
The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want it to go. Renato wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform?
Rebels were fighting ravens everywhere. Not a super weapon in sight. No one was summoning giant murder birds out of the clouds. There were no locusts, no rain of fire. Something blew up nearby. And Renato decided it was not time to stop and ponder. Just as well. He liked acting much better than pondering.
Ever wonder why the Imperial Ravens are always hiring?
Finally, Renato reached the Emperor's ship, and there he saw a strange sight. Zenobia being led in shackles by Lapino with a squad of ravens. What? Lapino was working with the ravens? Was he some sort of traitor? Of course Lapino was working with the ravens. But the Emperor still thought Zenobia was a traitor? Renato felt oddly bad about that. Should he run down there and rescue her? Oh, but she was the enemy. Then he heard a whistling sound. He looked straight up and saw a rebel ship. It was dropping rather large bombs. One of them kept getting bigger as it fell. Huh? Oh. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Bernardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Bernardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.
The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters.
The Iblis stone. It would whisper promises in his ear, offer him power for blood. But this time, Bernardo was sure he could master it.
And so, Bernardo went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient code held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away.
Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals?
I'll just have a dash, thought Bernardo.
What was he doing here? Last time, the stone had fought him for possession of his own soul. Whoa, personal space? Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. A road less traveled. This could be fun. If it wasn't fatal, that is. No skateboarding, the sign said. Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato. Coming back to him. He wondered what he'd remember next. The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Renato hated cannon traps. Also, who reloaded these things anyway? He never figured that part out. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead?
It was the eye of a lost god, torn out by the transcendent emperor to power his greatest weapon.
What's the core?
Said the stone anxiously.
What you want?
But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it. The gem could give great power, but it was evil. But Renato had a plan. He would divide the stone into the power half and the evil half. He sought out the sage Calaveras.
Oh, you need a mirror of splitting.
Croaked Calaveras.
I can make one.
Calaveras set up various shiny things. And soon Renato was setting the stone down in the middle of Calaveras' lab. There was a flash, and now Renato was looking at himself. Except with a mustache, and a goatee and darker hair. There were two Iblis stones. One light, and one dark. Renato took the light one. He felt a rush of great power. Now I could defeat the Emperor. Wait a minute. Unfortunately, he couldn't think of any way to use it without hurting someone. That wouldn't be nice. Give me that, said his evil-looking twin. And he drew his sword. He only got it halfway out of the scabbard when he fainted from the effort. Obviously, neither weak, evil Renato nor powerful, nice Renato was any threat to the Empire. After the Emperor's victory, they were exhibited in a museum until time ended, which was soon after. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it.
Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away.
Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? Now, doopsie-doo. Cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late.
Come on. One fox, no waiting.
You couldn't hack this kind of firewall. You had to warm it up to you. There had to be some way to use the Iblis stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Renato was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people. Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. This would be the perfect place for a tic-tac-toe board.
It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the Transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. It's the core, said the stone anxiously. But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it. Why was he listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes. Especially when they've become enemies. As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun. Was it the time of the lost gods before the Transcendent Emperor? Was it the future? Feed the souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls, its thirst for blood. All right, I get it. This was going to be interesting. The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown, what sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he? On Zenobia's island were no match for Renato. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him. Ooh, if only he'd some kind of magic fire sword. Couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he?
Renato hated gogglers. It freaked him out to cut them. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender? She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled.
She spotted the stone and bolted without another word.
Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way.
Kill her,
whispered the stone.
You cannot win your rebellion without it.
Please. No, said Zenobia. Not that way. Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? Renato hesitated. Zenobia was his greatest enemy. She was the Emperor's daughter and his greatest general, and the single person Renato least wanted to remove from this world, especially that way. She was holding her arms out before her, hands fluttering, fending him off with hopeless urgency. Nope, she was weaving a spell. He couldn't move.
This thing is evil, she said. She slid the Iblastone out of its slot in his gauntlet and slipped it into a bag. Maybe we can learn from it.
She eyed him with a strange, wry, apologetic look. I missed you too. And before he could move again, she was gone. Learn from the Iblastone? What did that mean? Would she take it to the palace or to the observatory on the Nexus? If she thought it was evil, she wouldn't want it in the palace.
And, after all, it was evil, wasn't it?
Maybe I can outrace her to the observatory, thought Renato. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. Renato felt a little sick. Ever since Zenobia had taken the stone from him, he'd felt an ache that wouldn't go away. He missed it. He wanted it back. He needed it back. Why hadn't he killed her when he had the chance? She was the enemy. He hadn't even seen her in 14 years. Why had he hesitated? You're a sucker for an empowered woman. Renato kicked himself. Don't make that mistake again. Zenobia thought the stone was evil. Was it?
Well, yes, but he still longed to have it back. He'd felt so good killing ravens with it, and yet he'd felt unclean ever since he'd touched it. She confused him. She'd made him want to be a better fox, and then she'd abandoned him, never telling him she was the Emperor's daughter, never contacting him since. But who was she to tell him the stone was evil? Imagine if you built a house of one of these things. Oh, that would be amazing. It would be like having a boat. On the device and let it do all the killing for him. But that wouldn't be sport, would it? Or fun. The scientist's toes were pointing arcane instruments at the stone and looking at it through prisms and reflections. Mine, said Renato as he took back the stone. Well, we need it for science, croaked the toads. So he killed them. He felt better immediately. Smarter, too. I thought you would never come for me, whispered the stone. Then, a far-speaker toad croaked in something like Zenobia's voice.
Leonardo, leave the stone with the toads. It will swallow your soul. You'll kill everyone you love.
That did seem vaguely familiar. But Renato had an army to lead, an empire to bring down.
I know you can fight this thing.
Zenobia continued in the far speaker's croak.
You let me live. You know how evil it is. It will destroy you, Leonardo. It will destroy everything you love.
He had tried to convince himself that this time he would control the Iblis stone. But he could feel his will becoming brittle. She was right. He would get rid of it. Right? Now. Or now. He didn't really want to. I know. I'll go to the mountains, Renato thought. I'll find the strength to do it in the peace and quiet there. As the Farfarer landed at the foot of the mountains, Renato was surprised to find Lapino there. What are you doing here? Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I was stowed away on an Imperial courier ship, dressed up as a combat nurse carrying a general's beak transplant. This is not a great time, said Renato, who was pretty sure he did not, in fact, believe Lapino's story. That's when you need your friends, said Lapino. I just need some peace and quiet, said Renato, and grimly set out on the path. Sorry, mustache, thought Renato. Imagine getting a horse up in one of these things. It would be cursing a blue streak. Renato told his friend how he had slaughtered the toads, and how he had nearly slain Zenobia.
A terrible burden, this Iblis stone.
Sympathized the rabbit. Yeah, but I need it. For the rebellion.
Do you now? You know, you were a pretty fine fighter before you were wielding a demonic decoration.
Oddly, the sword wasn't whispering at him to kill the Pinot. Up ahead in the mountains, there was a peaceful spot. If he could rid himself of his burden anywhere, it was there. Renato thought he would make a difference, snatching the Iblastone before the Emperor could get it. It would destroy him. Zenobia and Lapino, they were both trying to save him. Peace. That was what he needed. So much for peace and quiet. There was Lapino. Again.
You're stronger than some dumb rock, Lapino said. Let's just bury it, and no one will ever find it again.
Renato could feel the spirit energy of all those dead ravens inside him, pecking away. The rabbit was right. Even if the rabbit was a traitor, he was still right. He tore the Iblastone from his gauntlet and threw it into the hole Lapino had dug. The stone was silent. Probably sulking.
Now whoop those Imperials, said Lapino.
Are you coming?
Ah, no, I can't come with you. It's my old injury, you know. Recently, it's been acting up terrible. I'd be no use to you at all.
So Renato boarded the Farfarer alone. Renato felt lonely on board the Farfarer. How could his old friend Lapino, miraculously escaped from the Empire, leave him to face the final battle alone? Well, he'd abandoned Lapino before, hadn't he? It was only fair. And of course he felt lonely. He'd given up the Iblastone and all the souls he fed it. Of course he felt alone. But he had done the right thing. It had been hard to do, but there was no better feeling than that. Zenobia would be so proud of him. The battle, alas, was not going well. He no longer had the stone, and he'd never gotten the core. Lapino wasn't with him, and he was up against Zenobia, out there somewhere, maneuvering the Emperor's forces. The rebels had been outnumbered from the start, and he still had that aching longing for the stone. But that is what it means to be a hero. He would fight his way to Zenobia. He would show her what he was capable of. Just him, with no diabolic accoutrements. He would win, no matter the odds. There were a lot of shiny, smooth, curved with leather, buckles. Kind of smelled, never mind. Yes, there was also ore and other useful stuff. Let's focus on that, shall we? Renato remembered when the Emperor had first come to the throne. He built universities and libraries. He used to invite scientists to dinner. What could have made that toad so afraid of death that he would risk bringing back the lost gods?
Didn't I just kill your brother? Yes, that was it. Pirouette, slash, parry, dodge. Renato had never done such good work in a fight. He wished the both were allowed to sing of his exploits for his old age. Maybe he wouldn't have to kill Zenobia. Maybe he could defeat her and take her prisoner. Then he could turn the tide against the Emperor. If she wasn't crowned princess, once this was all over, she'd have more time for him, right?
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? By some miracle, Renato fought his way to the Emperor's ship. He was exhausted, bleeding, but he'd found the strength to reject the stone. Zenobia came out of the ship. "Renato!" she shouted, and then she fell down and died. Lapino was behind her, wielding a sword that seemed to suck all the light out of the sun. "You idiot! You threw the stone away!" cried Lapino. "You said it was evil." "It hates sanctimonious prigs like you," laughed Lapino. "We're having a grand old time." Renato turned and ran. But no matter where he ran, Lapino jumped in front of him until Renato was cornered. That boy could hop. "You wouldn't do this to an old friend, would you?" cried Renato. "You mean this?" said Lapino, as he slid the sword into Renato's guts. "Damn it! Again?"
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.
Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Renato could use that somehow. Ah, Lapino. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens?
The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret ritual. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Renato looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best. What was behind that door? Renato's nose told him there was treasure there. They must have forgotten it in a hurry. Surely they wouldn't mind if he helped himself to it. After all, he wouldn't even know. This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway? There was still no sign of Lapino. Not a hair, not a pellet. Was he hiding in the cemetery further down the road? That didn't seem like him. Lapino would betray him. But now Renato knew that. What would Lapino do if he knew that Lapino was going to betray him? Well, he'd concocted his scheme. Now use Lapino's betrayal against him and it would blow up in his face. Maybe he was overthinking this. Well, that would...
Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him.
On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper,
it's beautiful here, thought Renato. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right, Lapino was a traitor. But still, he was good company. Ah, Zenobia. Now that he knew she still loved him, he wanted to go back to her. But that hadn't worked out, had it? Maybe it was time to find the core of the Sky Ripper.
Why would anyone put his slinky collection in a strongbox, thought Renato? Magic slinkies? There was something else.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Hey, why don't you guys fight in groups? Oh, I know. Because Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, a few birds. He didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones. No healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lapino was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here.
It looked like they'd forgotten to turn off their flamethrower.
As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy. Like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides.
It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? Tell you what, said Lapino.
I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost.
The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Reynardo.
But what if Lapino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Reynardo ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Reynardo, you won't regret this. I'll treat the core like it was my own baby daughter.
As the Farfarer dived towards the Nexus, Lapino was jumping up and down with excitement. "Stop rabbiting around," Reynardo said. Lapino just stared at him. The moment the ship landed, Lapino leapt off the ship.
As Lapino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Reynardo vaguely remembered Lapino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Reynardo was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lapino would get it right. And if Reynardo could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in this sector. Right? Reynardo caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lapino. Of course he had to let Lapino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right? Reynardo took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the Farspeaker Toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lapino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lapino again? And now the Empire had the core. Reynardo hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their Farspeaker didn't crouch back. Was the base under attack too? Who knew what was going on at the base? But he knew what the ravens would do to Lapino if Reynardo didn't rescue him fast.
Well, actually, he wasn't exactly sure. It kind of depended on whether Lapino was a traitor or not. Reynardo just couldn't bring himself to believe that.
What are old friends for, if not to need rescuing every few days? Reynardo felt a twinge of doubt. Should he have gone to the base? No, Logically, wherever they'd taken Lapino was probably where they took the core, right? Oh, why couldn't Lapino have just for once not got himself captured? Was that too much to ask? He shouldn't be too hard on the rabbit. No, he meant well, and he was insanely brave. You have to admire that. You never get tired of doing that, Bernardo. Where were they holding Lapino anyway? There was no sign of him or the ravens who'd captured him. Just rocks and snow and the usual scouts. No sign of the core either. Wild rabbit chase? Oh, Lapino to screw up even getting captured. But what was this rebellion for anyway? Well, Lapino was a useless goof. But he was a friend. If friends didn't matter anymore, what was the point of winning this war?
Next time, 3 more birds.
As for the gate, well, he could take her or leave her. Sorry, the rebellion would soon be engaging the Imperial fleet in a desperate battle. All Reynardo had done was save a friend. It didn't feel as good as he'd hoped.
At the end of the mountain path, Reynardo came to a clearing. There was a campfire, raven feathers, and... oh, Lapino's lucky deck of cards. Well, that wasn't good. Reynardo hoped Lapino would not try to cheat his captors at cards. Ravens were much better than weasels at counting, and they had a very poor sense of humor.
Then, he saw what he had hoped never to see. Fresh scraps of rabbit fur. Ragged and bloody, ravens would eat anything.
By Crabthar's hammer!
Reynardo screamed at the sky.
I will avenge you!
The rebels had assembled their fleet. Ahead, the clouds were dark with Imperial ships. If he could reach the Emperor before the rest of the rebels did, maybe he could settle this without too much bloodshed. He set sail, and the Farfarer shot forward.
Poor Lapino had never been a great warrior. The Mad Rabbit was good for a lark and a laugh. And a pint. The thought of ravens eating him made Reynardo furious. The way they were eating up the land. The way the Emperor was eating up the people with his new, bloodthirsty ways. He would make them all pay.
The portal that led right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense.
Every objective to save his friend. He'd given up the armature, the core, the gem, and even Zenobia. He loved Lapino, he realized. And now the rabbit was gone. A hero looks out for his friends, even when they're gone. He would send Lapino an honor guard of ravens to serve him in the halls of the Valiant. He would avenge him. Finally, he reached the Emperor's ship. And there was Lapino, surrounded by ravens. He was alive! They'd eaten some other rabbit. "I'll save you!" he shouted with joy and flung himself at the ravens. "Aw, you shouldn't have," said Lapino when the last raven was down. Reynardo threw his arms around his best friend. "I had to come. I love you, man. You really, really shouldn't have," said Lapino. And Reynardo felt a rather sharp pain in his back. As he collapsed, Lapino took the dagger out of Reynardo's back and wiped it off on Reynardo's sleeve. "Why, you always have to be the hero. Brave Reynardo, epic Reynardo, super sexy Reynardo, and I'm sick of it." As Reynardo died, all he could think was,
Damn it. Fooled again.
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.
Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause,
And maybe Renato could use that somehow.
Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the ravens?
The ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Renato looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best.
The Raven one, talking to her son. Don't write, don't call. Get it? Call? I just made that up.
In a swirl of newly remembered knowledge, needed to focus. That could be useful.
Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized.
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him.
On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him.
The rabbit had a point, and Renato had a feeling she'd want to see him again. Who knows what could happen between the two of them this time around?
She knows all his plans, chuckled the master spy. She won't give them up easily. She'll tell the interrogators, all right, said Lapino. Taking her would change the game, all right.
The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. This was the nice part of town, but the ravens had been through here. They like to take shiny things home to their nests. If you can't stand the heat, he thought, stay out of the flamethrower. was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously, it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. There must be some way to play on that, Renato thought. Gogglers. Renato hated gogglers. It was almost impossible to sneak past them. If one didn't spot you, another one would.
So, what's this plan of yours?
Use me as bait, said Lupino.
And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfair a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renato hiding inside a monstrous watermelon.
What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renato.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino.
To traitors!
Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She became smoke. And he noticed he had a blade to his throat. Stay a while, purred a familiar voice. Did you really think you could capture me? Zenobia said as the ship lifted off. Now I just wanted some privacy, Renato said. Renato knew she still had feelings for him. Maybe he could just cut to the chase. But was timing right for that? I know how you feel about me, baby. I know you want to be with me, Renato said. What? The Emperor's evil, babe. I'm nice. Remember how nice I was back in school? You were an idiot in school. You said I was funny, said Renato, starting not to like how the conversation was going. The Emperor pulled me out of an alley. Don't tell me he's evil. Yeah, but did you ever wonder why? No, I didn't. Why don't you ask him? Well, because I know why. He wants to sacrifice you. You can tell him that when he interrogates you. Can't we just start this over? But Zenobia shut him in the hold of the ship. He had no one to explain anything to until he was brought to the Emperor's interrogators. After that, it was just screaming. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators.
Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. Was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. Yeah, there must be some way to play on that, Renato thought.
Say goodnight, Gracie, said Renato, wondering who Gracie was.
So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renato hiding inside a monstrous watermelon.
What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renato. Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino.
Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled.
Now I just wanted some privacy, Renato said.
Renato knew she still had feelings for him. Maybe he could just cut to the chase. But was timing right for that?
Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? And he told her why. His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him immortal. But to seal the bargain, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him.
You're lying. She was furious. You can't prove that.
I can.
And so, we set sail for the Nexus.
The scientists at the observatory have resurrected one of his victims. Well, he's not exactly alive, but he can talk, and he can't lie. You took a big risk. You know, I could just cast a spell to make you tell me where the rebel base is. And you wouldn't consider that cheating? She frowned. Ugh, fine. Let's go get your witness. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them.
She caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you want to join in? Oh, no, I'd destroy his books and... all right, I suppose I wouldn't.
She stopped, troubled. He ran on. Scientists on this island had been investigating the Emperor's dark rituals on their own. They were neutral in the civil war engulfing the Empire, but they could see that the dark magics the old Toad had loosed were changing the world. Renato hoped he and Zenobia weren't putting them in danger.
A cannon trap. Who doesn't love being shot by cannons? Who kept these things loaded anyway? The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them." It was what Renato had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there, even if she did love him? Renato reached Lapino by Farspeaker Toad, the one creature the Ravens had left alive at the observatory.
Lapino seemed awfully anxious to meet him at the secret base. If he was a spy for the Empire, he'd turn around and reveal the coordinates to the Empire, jeopardizing the entire rebellion. But Renato couldn't bear to think that Lapino would commit such horrible treachery. There was still good in the Mad Rabbit. He felt sure of it.
I'll meet up with you at the base,
Lapino said through the Toad. Good thinking. Renato gave him the coordinates. There's a shuttle here I can, borrow.
Renato found Zenobia in the chart room.
"I've been having awful dreams," she said. "Dead kittens and worse. I thought they were only dreams, you know. Why would anyone want the lost gods back? In those days, the favorite of a god could become immortal." She held herself and shivered. "He wants to become an eater of souls. Well, I'm not afraid of dying. Just dying of boredom," Renato said, but she didn't laugh.
Silence fell as they flew towards the ruins of the city of Ubar, where the rebellion leadership was hiding. If Zenobia couldn't help them fight off her father, no one could. As they touched the ground, He could smell the ravens and hear their hungry caws in the distance.
They're probably looking for me, she said. You go on ahead. She had that fiery look in her eyes that he'd always loved. It was a bit odd, though. How easy she'd been to convince. It was what he'd gambled on, but he'd expected more of an argument. She'd always loved to argue. She considered it the fastest way to the truth. Maybe she'd long suspected the truth. Sometimes all it took was taking the bandages from your eyes. That must be it, he told himself.
Haven't you heard? Gosling's over.
Turned, the war could soon be over. She could send orders to the fleet that would leave their defenses wide open. The rebels could sail right in and capture the Emperor. Victory. Not too many casualties.
This chest contained blank passports from 15 countries. And something useful. They caught their breath under a ruined arch. It's beautiful, she said. This was the library of Ubar, he said. Your father's ravens thought they had an ancient book. She nodded. Was she crying? This was exactly what I wanted, Renata thought. To turn her to our cause. So, why do I feel something is terribly wrong? Because nothing ever goes this smoothly, is why.
Hey, can't you tell if someone's far away, or just really small? long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Council toads swarmed around Zenobia, shocked she was there, shocked she had changed sides. Then, the walls exploded. He heard toads croaking, "Oh, the ravens!" Blackbirds were pouring through holes everywhere. "It's a trap!" cried the council speaker. In the confusion, he saw flashes of magic. Then Zenobia being hustled off by Imperial troops. So... she had betrayed him after all. Renato ran for his ship. The Farfarer flew into the clouds, barely losing the Imperial ravens pursuing him. The rebellion was lost, and he had lost it. There was nothing to do but find Zenobia and make her pay for her treachery. His heart ached. He still loved her. But he had trusted her, and he had been a fool. She would be back at the fleet, gloating with her mad, bloodthirsty father. For all Renato knew, she was helping him bring back the old, lost gods back from their exile. Renato landed in the middle of the Imperial fleet. The rebels were losing badly. Without leadership, it was a slaughter. Renato felt strangely free, trying not to think about how he had lost the war, trying not to think about how he had loved Zenobia, blinded himself to her treachery. That's what it meant to be a hero. To keep on fighting after the most bitter of betrayals. To never know if you could trust anyone. Cats. What a waste of fur. The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want it to go.
had happened to Lupino. But the Mad Rabbit fled to safety, mostly forlornly carrying on with the few rebels Renato could see here or there. It didn't matter anymore. All there was slash and spin, parry and lunge, over and over as he fought his way across the fleet. All there was finding the girl he'd once slugged, who had used his love against him and putting as big a hole in her heart as she'd left in his.
Even worse.
Suddenly, Zenobia was there, advancing on Lupino. So the Mad Rabbit had survived. "Save me, or I'm done for!" screamed Lupino. Zenobia turned, showing her teeth in a smile. "You're alive!" Renato ran towards the witch. "Lupino's the one who betrayed you!" she shouted. "He warned my father!" Before he could think, Renato sank his sword into the sorceress. She stared at him, heartbroken. "No! Lupino's the traitor!" Renato had an awful, sinking feeling in his stomach. Then, he felt a knife in his back. "I'm afraid she's right," said the Mad Rabbit. "Ain't I a stinker?" Then, the sun went out. Damn it!
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also,
A temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.